thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about what makes a writer successful. When I started my career, I feel I need to tell you right now, off the bat, I was clueless. I had never attended a creative writing course. I didn't know a single person in publishing, so I didn't really know what publishing was about. I hadn't even attended an author's talk. However, I was not going to let my cluelessness and my ignorance put me off, no, because whilst I was clueless and directionless, I wasn't hopeless. I was, in fact, full of hope. And I had been a writer since I was 7-year-old. Here's the great thing about the arts, whether you're a potter, a painter, a musician. You just do the thing and you're it. But I wanted specifically to be a published writer. Why? Well, did I dream of seeing my name on a book cover? I didn't actually, although that is totally legitimate motivation, and I know lots of authors who do indeed dream of that. Did I want the fame and fortune? No, I didn't. Although, can I say both things are relatively lovely? Just saying. I tell you why I wanted to be a writer. When I was a child and a teen and a young adult, I found the world pretty horrific, actually. Completely confusing. I looked around and couldn't understand why there was wars and famine and terrible, awful things. And I couldn't understand why people in the school playground were awful too. It was a lonely, brutal, horrible place, or so I thought. But I also knew there were millions of people on the planet, and I couldn't, well, billions actually, obviously. I couldn't possibly be the only person who felt that. So I thought if I somehow could get my ideas, my thoughts, my hopes, my fears out there to enough people, I would make connections. And somehow, through those connections, I would find my place in the world and become purposeful, which for me, being purposeful is being successful. And that seemed to resonate for me. So I have had this publishing job now, 23 years. I have met hundreds of authors, probably thousands now, actually, all at very, very different stages of their careers. Some of them are literally tapping the keyboards for the very first time, writing a short story. Others are multi-million selling, international, global household names. They're all at different stages of their careers, but I would say the successful ones, and that's in that first camp as well as that second camp, the successful writers have some commonalities. And I'm all about commonalities. I've identified 5 attributes that I think make a writer successful. But I believe these attributes can be used in other careers, vocations, and disciplines. Before I start, I'm going to define success. Because, you know what, I've mentioned that my original goal for success was making connections. And it really was, and it really is still now. That's important to me. But for many, it's things like getting that first publishing contract, seeing your book on the shelves in a bookstore, in a library, getting a review, getting your name on a literary prize nomination, or it might be seeing your name on the bestseller list. It might be an amalgamation of all the above. It doesn't matter. The attributes I'm going to talk to speak to all of the above. Creativity. So I think it's not controversial to say a writer ought to be creative. You know, I think that's a given. In fact, it's so much of a given, I don't think we consider it well enough. What does it mean to create something? Well, let's think about it. Before a writer starts, there's nothing. There's no idea. And then they have an idea and a plot and a character, and they put some words on a page. First in sentences, they put the sentences together to make paragraphs, chapters, an entire novel. It's all going incredibly well. There was nothing, now there is something. That something might present itself in breath-stealingly fabulous prose and or a knock your socks off, didn't see it coming twist. Doesn't matter how it presents itself. It will create a response. It will create an entire world and evoke joy, fear, loathing, yearning, all the things it is to be human. That's what a writer does. That's what they create. Writers are playful. They play with time and gender, and they're curious. They ask, what if? What next? Why? Where? When? Yet, we're also deadly serious, because the reason we write is to capture what it means to be human and to get that experience on a page so other people connect to it and understand and feel they can relate. So, how do we manage that? Well, me personally, I spend my entire life being on high alert. It actually means that I find I'm very vulnerable because I tell people all the time what I'm thinking and feeling, and I ask if they understand it, and they might not, so I'm also very insecure. Other times, I'm full of joy, and I think, I'm so joyful and positive that it might be a good idea to spend a year writing 100,000 words about love. So, if I'm going to expose myself constantly by telling you my thoughts and feelings, and I'm going to need this attribute too, resilience. It is an absolute fact that writers have to learn to cope with two particular things: isolation and rejection. It's a real conundrum. Writers are born observers. We watch on, we look in from a distance. We want to solve mysteries and complexities. We want to understand the secrets. And yet, I keep mentioning, we want to make these connections. That's our raison d'etre. So we put ourselves in this position where we self-isolate, we work on our own for such a long period of time, and we're longing for a tribe. That needs to be worked through. So what can you do to help with isolation if you find that you have a job that is self-isolated? Well, I think old-fashioned things like hobbies and exercise are good. Podcasts. Diarising long drunken lunches works for me, just saying. Rejection. Rejection's another fact of being a writer. There was a Victorian poet, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She's a favourite of mine. Very sweet woman. She wrote this lovely poem to her husband, and it started with, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." Now, as a writer, honestly, I can parody that. How do you reject me? Let me count the ways. The first big rejection invariably comes when you're trying to get an agent. Yeah, they don't want you, just saying. I mean, eventually they do want you. Somebody will want you, but they will tell you they don't want you for so long. And then eventually you'll get an agent and you'll think, great. And then they will take you around to publishers and you will have a whole nother string of rejections. How do you become resilient to that? Well, I think it's worth remembering no one can stop you being a writer. They can't bar you from it the way they can bar you from being a lawyer or a medic. You literally just keep going, just do it. There's great power in that. Do what makes you happy. Other rejections. You get your publisher. Yes, you must be in the clear now, right? Everybody loves you. You have an agent who loves you. You have a publisher who loves you. Aha. You have a whole globe that may or may not love you. All the readers that are out there may or may not reject you. Reviewers may or may not reject you. Yeah, it could be the man you meet at a dinner party who says something like, "Should I have heard of you?" Or, and this one's a killer, the woman you see in the bookstore who is actually picking up your book and she is reading the back of the cover. So you think, quid's in here. You sidle up to her and humbly tell her you wrote it. Earnestly pitch it with everything you've got. And then she silently puts the book down and heads out of the shop. It's even more embarrassing if she buys something else on the way out. Just saying, true story, has happened. So what? I'm still standing. John Lydgate, the poet, said, you can't please all the people all the time. And it's absolutely true. So I would suggest that maybe the writer's duty, therefore, is to please themselves. Or if not a duty, then a really good way of saving your sanity. I am a very strong self-critic. I really am harsh with myself. I want to write the best novel I can possibly write. I want an authentic voice. I want a compelling plot, interesting characters. And I know when I've achieved that to the best of my ability. I also know when I need to redraft and redraft and redraft. And by the time my book is out to my publishers and eventually out into, hopefully, your hands, I know I can hold my head up high. So I've found resilience in, if somebody doesn't want to read it, that's absolutely fine. There are hundreds of thousands of books out there. I really encourage them to go and find one they do resonate with. So it's important to work out what will make you feel happy and successful. Do not spend any time looking over your shoulder and comparing and contrasting with other people's definition of success, or worse still, other people's actual success. Let them enjoy their success. Enjoy their success for them. Find out what will make you happy. Otherwise, you will torture yourself. I really highly recommend it as a way forward. So that constant redrafting, etc., is exhaustive. And so what else do we need? Discipline. No one gets a writer out of bed in the morning. No one cares if I'm on the commuter train. I get, maybe once a year, my publisher will check in and go, you are going to deliver, right? Because next month is delivery date. And I go, it's all under control. It always is. Because I am self-disciplined, I have to be. Thomas Edison said that success is 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. And I think that's absolutely spot on. It's not enough to have a good idea. You need to hone and practice. It is a writer's responsibility to get the words on the page. Even if you're in my lucky position where there's an entire team waiting to get that book to market and in the hands of readers, they can't do that until I put the words on the page. So I need to, and writers need to, and you really ought to as well, believe in yourself, believe in your worth and in your ambitions. Because people become more successful once they believe in themselves, because interestingly, the way we all are, we believe in others once they believe in themselves. So look at how you spend your time and ask, is it serving you? When I was in my 20s and I wanted to write my first novel and get a publishing deal, I turned down countless offers to go to pubs and parties and clubs. Now, I know you're now thinking, we liked her before, now we think she's boring. No, I did not feel boring at the time. I felt alive and successful and purposeful because I was doing what I knew I wanted to do. I was following my dream, not following my friends to the Ministry of Sound. So we have established that I believe writers need to be creative, resilient, and disciplined. What else? Well, I have another apparent contradiction because I believe they need to ooze this creativity, but they also need to have business awareness. And there is this sort of peculiar belief that we can be one or the other. Not true. We can all be a little bit of everything. It's out there for us. I personally really like to be all over every aspect of the publishing industry. Honestly, I like to know where the paper is shipped from. I like to know how it works in that printing factory and what goes on in the warehouse, which you are now completely convinced I'm the dullest person ever. But no, the people in these jobs doing this function are part of the supply chain management that affect distribution and pricing, which is very important to me. These are important people that do important jobs that are part of my process. I scrutinize my own contracts. I am aware of trends in overseas markets. I know the reach of publicity and marketing campaigns. Now, that's not for all authors. A lot of authors will be thinking, that is so not me. I just want to be able to write my book. But I swear the successful writers will at least have an appreciation of their team, which, can I say, I believe is business awareness, knowing what your team are doing, largely for you, and understanding that being a writer is not a one-person show, but a huge orchestra, arguably conducted by the publishing house, but including retailers, journalists, agents, other authors that support. librarians, bloggers, vloggers, and ultimately the reader. That is the orchestra I am part of. So why is it important that I'm aware of the market? Well, nothing in life stays the same, just doesn't. And you need to be aware of that and manage that, which brings me on to my fifth and final point, adaptability. It's really easy, isn't it? You've heard it all before, this kind of the good old days. You know, when people could leave the door unlocked and everyone had time to say hello to each other, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Now, I do not subscribe to that simple narrative. I'm certain there will have been some fabulous things about history. I am convinced there are some fabulous things about now and about the future, which is you guys. And because I'm convinced of that, which makes me quite optimistic about life, it's a marvellous position to be in, I am convinced that I need to be, as H.G. Wells said, I need to adapt or perish. I need to move forward. So let's look at that. In the 23 years, what are the changes I've seen in my career? Well, I'd argue, and I feel quite dangerous arguing this in this hollowed place of learning, but I would argue there's been a little toppling of the ivory tower. We no longer look at experts in the way we used to. We still accept they're experts, but we do have a more progressive, egalitarian world where more voices can be heard. And that's a good thing. So, the vibe, what's the vibe for that? What does that mean in my real life? Well, first of all, I do a lot more self-marketing. Social media did not exist when I started my career. So now I spend an awful lot of time on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And when I started, that wasn't required of me. But being an accessible and present author is important to my success, I feel. But, you know, it's time-consuming, it's important. These kind of things and podcasts and things that have just come out of nowhere, that's about 40% of my time now. There's an unwritten deal that's going on between me and my readers. They're not prepared to just say, oh, Adele's the expert, she's marvellous, she's a novelist, I must read her book. They want to know a little bit more about me. My cat's names, for instance, gorgeous and fabulous, and they really, really are. What other changes have I seen in the last 23 years? E-books, audiobooks, those things. Well, audiobooks was a smidge of the market when I started out. E-books didn't exist at all. There is constant competition for your mind share because there are so many more things we can do with our time. I mean, Charles Dickens. I'm not knocking the fella. Good bloke, obviously. Produced fantastic novels, obviously, but no real competition. He did not have to put up with the constant sort of streamers, Spotify, Sky Sport, the aforementioned TikTok and Tinder. None of those were sort of competing for his time or his readers' time to read his stuff. In conclusion, if you are the type of person who is prepared to be creative, resilient, disciplined, have an eye on business, and still adapt, then I'm pretty certain your name will be on the top of the bestseller list if that's where you want it to be. Maybe you want to take your creativity and your curiosity and your dedication in another direction. If you do, can I say, success is there for all of us. It is within our reach. And that, I hope, is a little tiny part of a legacy I would like to leave you with, that thought. Thank you.